The coffee machine in our office break room has this annoying habit of gurgling just loud enough to mask conversations, but not quite loud enough to drown them out completely. I was standing there Tuesday morning, watching the dark liquid drip into my mug when I heard my sister's voice cutting through the mechanical noise. She only got that job because of pity. My hand froze on the sugar dispenser. Through the glass partition, I could see Sarah's perfectly styled blonde hair as she leaned toward Mike from accounting, her voice carrying that conspiratorial tone she'd perfected since childhood. I mean, come on, she continued, Dad practically begged Mr. Chun to hire her. My daughter's been struggling since the accident, he said. She just needs a chance. It's embarrassing, honestly. The sugar kept pouring even though my cup was already overflowing. Mike made some noncommittal sound, probably uncomfortable with the whole conversation, but too polite to walk away. Sarah had that effect on people, and now she's acting like she actually deserves to be here. Writing reports, staying late, trying so hard to prove herself. It's almost sad. I set the sugar dispenser down with more force than necessary. The metallic clang echoed in the small break room, and I saw Sarah's head turn slightly toward the sound. But I was already walking away, my shoes clicking against the polished floor of Henderson and Associates' main corridor. The thing is, Sarah wasn't entirely wrong. Dad had called in a favor. After the car accident 18 months ago left me with a permanent limp and a medical debt that could fund a small country, I'd been unemployed for 8 months. Depression had settled in like fog, thick and suffocating, making even simple tasks feel impossible. But the part about pity, that's where Sarah got it wrong. I'd been working at Henderson and Associates for 6 months now, and I'd thrown myself into every project with the desperation of someone who had something to prove. Not just to my colleagues, not just to Mr. Chun, but to myself. The quarterly sustainability report sitting on my desk had consumed my last 3 weeks. I'd analyzed every department's resource usage, identified 12 areas for improvement, and projected cost savings that would make even the most cynical board member take notice. My phone buzzed. A text from my physical therapist. Don't forget, appointment at 4 p.m. today. How's the leg feeling? I typed back, same as always. See you later. The leg was the least of my problems now. I slipped the phone into my blazer pocket and walked toward the conference room where our monthly all-hands meeting was about to begin. Sarah was already seated near the front, her notebook open, pen poised like she was ready to solve world hunger. She caught my eye and gave me that smile, the one that looked genuine unless you knew her well enough to see the calculation behind it. Morning, Emma, she said sweetly. How's the big report coming along? It's done, I replied, taking a seat 3 rows behind her. Mr. Chun's reviewing it now. Oh, wonderful. I'm sure he'll find it adequate. Adequate. The word sat in my stomach like a stone. Mr. Chun walked into the room at exactly 9 a.m., followed by the other senior partners. He was a compact man in his 50s, with gray hair and the kind of quiet authority that made people lean forward when he spoke. He'd been nothing but professional with me since I started, but I'd always wondered if he saw me as the charity case Dad had asked him to help. Good morning, everyone, he began, his voice carrying easily through the room. Before we dive into departmental updates, I want to address something that's been on my mind. He paused, scanning the room. His eyes lingered on me for just a moment longer than the others. We've been talking about sustainability initiatives for months now, making promises to clients, setting targets, but struggling to find actionable solutions. Yesterday, I received a report that changed everything. Sarah straightened in her chair. She'd been heading up the Green Initiatives Committee, a role she'd lobbied for aggressively when the position opened. This report, Mr. Chun continued, holding up a thick bound document, represents exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. It's thorough, practical, and if implemented, would save us approximately $200,000 annually while reducing our carbon footprint by 30%. A murmur rippled through the room. Sarah's pen had stopped moving. The analysis is brilliant, Mr. Chun said, his voice warming with genuine enthusiasm. Cross-departmental resource mapping, predictive modeling for waste reduction, even a pilot program framework with measurable benchmarks. This is the work of someone who understands both The environmental imperative and the business reality. He looked directly at me now, and I felt every eye in the room follow his gaze. Emma Rodriguez, would you please stand? My heart hammered against my ribs. I pushed myself up, my left leg protesting slightly as I put weight on it. The room was completely silent. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chun announced, this is the author of our new sustainability roadmap. Emma, I'm not exaggerating when I say this is some of the finest analytical work I've seen in my 20-year career. The applause started slowly, then built to something genuine and sustained. I felt heat rising in my cheeks as I nodded acknowledgement, my eyes inadvertently finding Sarah's face. She was clapping too, but her smile looked like it had been carved from ice. Emma, Mr. Chun continued, I'd like you to present the key findings to the board next week. And I think it's time we discussed your transition to a senior analyst position. I sat down carefully, my mind spinning. 6 months ago, I'd been lying in a hospital bed, convinced my career was over. Now I was being offered a promotion based on merit, actual merit, not pity. After the meeting, people approached me with congratulations. Handshakes, genuine smiles, questions about my methodology. Sarah hung back, organizing her papers with unusual care. That was quite something, she said when we were finally alone in the conference room. Dad will be so proud. This has nothing to do with Dad, I replied quietly. Of course not. She snapped her notebook shut. You've really found your place here, haven't you? Despite everything. Despite everything. Another carefully chosen phrase, designed to remind me of my limitations while maintaining plausible deniability. I should get back to work, I said, gathering my things. Emma, her voice stopped me at the door. I'm glad you're doing well. Really, I know it hasn't been easy. I turned back to look at her, this woman who'd shared a childhood with me, who'd held my hand during the worst days after the accident, who'd also just spent the morning telling a colleague that I didn't deserve to be here. Thanks, Sarah. That means a lot. But as I walked back to my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Sarah had built her reputation on being the golden child, the one who succeeded effortlessly at everything she touched. My sudden visibility threatened that narrative. I pulled up my email and saw a message from Mr. Chun. Emma, board presentation scheduled for next Thursday at 2 p.m. Please prepare a 20-minute overview. This is a significant opportunity. Richard, a significant opportunity, not pity, not charity, merit. I opened a new document and began outlining my presentation, the morning's conversation playing on repeat in my mind. Sarah thought I'd gotten this job because of pity. Tomorrow, I'd start proving just how wrong she was, but I had no idea how far she'd go to maintain her version of the truth. Growing up, Sarah was the kind of child who made other parents question their own kids' potential. She walked at 10 months, read chapter books at 4, and by middle school, she was already talking about her future career in business with the confidence of someone who'd never encountered a door that wouldn't open for her. Was 18 months, younger and content to live in her shadow. While Sarah dominated student government and in debate team, I found my peace in the school library, lost in books about faraway places and impossible adventures. Our parents loved us both, but they wore their pride in Sarah like a badge of honor. Our daughter Sarah is valedictorian, they tell neighbors. She's going to Harvard in the fall. I got into a good state school with a partial scholarship. Sarah got into Harvard with a full ride. The dynamic worked for us, or at least I thought it did. Sarah was the star, I was the supporter. She'd call me from college, breathless with excitement about internships and networking events, and I'd listen with genuine happiness for her success. When she graduated summa cum laude and immediately landed a position at Henderson and Associates, I felt nothing but pride. That was before I understood how much of her identity was built on being the successful one. The day after Mr. Chun's announcement, I arrived at the office to find Sarah already at her desk, surrounded by stacks of environmental compliance reports. She looked up as I passed, her smile as bright as ever. "Good morning, rising star," she said, her tone playful but with an edge I was beginning to recognize. "Ready for your big presentation?" "It's still a week away," I replied, settling into my cubicle across the aisle from hers. "I'm trying not to overthink it." Smart approach. Though I imagine it's quite different from what you're used to. All those eyes on you, the pressure to perform. She trailed off, returning to her papers. I'm sure you'll do fine. The phrase hung in the air. Between us, I'm sure you'll do fine. Not great, not brilliantly, just fine. I spent the morning diving into presentation prep, pulling together charts and graphs that would make my findings accessible to the board. Around 11, I noticed Sarah on a phone call, her voice low and urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but her body language suggested frustration. Everything okay? I asked when she hung up. Double quotes. Oh, just client management stuff. You know how it is. She paused, studying my screen. Are you using the Morrison projections for your waste reduction calculations? Yes, but I cross-referenced them with the Sullivan methodology to account for seasonal variations. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. That's ambitious. The Sullivan approach is notoriously unreliable for organizations our size. I'd hate to see you embarrass yourself in front of the board. The comment landed exactly where she'd intended. I spent the next hour second-guessing my methodology, pulling up research, papers, and double-checking calculations. By lunch, I'd convinced myself that maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I was in over my head. But then I remembered Mr. Chun's words. Some of the finest analytical work I've seen in my 20-year career. He wasn't prone to hyperbole. If he'd seen a fundamental flaw in my approach, he would have mentioned it. I was walking back from lunch when I ran into Janet Morrison from the facilities department. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been with the company for 15 years. Emma, she called out, her face lighting up. I heard about your sustainability report. Brilliant work on the IVIC optimization alone. That's going to save us a fortune. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. I actually used your department's usage data as a foundation for the projections. And thank God someone finally did something useful with all those numbers we've been collecting. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between you and me, we've been pushing for changes like this for years. Your sister's committee has been all talk and no action. The comment caught me off guard. Sarah's been working really hard on the green initiatives. I'm sure she has, sweetheart. But working hard and working smart are different things. Your report, that's working smart. I thought about that conversation as I walked back to my desk. Sarah had been heading the Green Initiatives Committee for 8 months. I'd assumed she was making progress, but apparently the people actually implementing the changes had a different perspective. How was lunch? Sarah asked without looking up from her computer. Good. I ran into Mrs. Morrison. She had some nice things to say about the report. Oh, Janet's sweet. She's always been generous with compliments. Sarah's fingers paused over her keyboard. Did she mention anything about the committee's work? Not specifically. Good. I'd hate for there to be any confusion about who's been driving the sustainability initiatives around here. She turned to face me fully. Emma, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think it's wise to put so much pressure on yourself? I mean, after everything you've been through, maybe a quieter role would be less stressful. The question hit me like a physical blow. After everything you've been through, the accident, the recovery, the depression, all of it reduced to a euphemism designed to remind me of my limitations. I'm fine, Sarah. The report speaks for itself. Of course it does. I just worry about you, that's all. The spotlight can be overwhelming, especially when you're not used to it. She was doing it again, expressing concern while simultaneously undermining my confidence. It was a skill she'd perfected over the years, so subtle that calling it out would make me look paranoid. I appreciate the concern, I said carefully, but I'm looking forward to the presentation. Of course you are. And I'll be there to support you no matter what happens. No matter what happens. The implication was clear. She expected me to fail. That evening, I stayed late to work on my presentation slides. The office was mostly empty. Just the security guard making his rounds and the cleaning crew working their way through the floors. I found the quiet helpful for concentration, and I was making real progress when I heard footsteps approaching my cubicle. Working late again? Sarah's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard her come back. Just putting some finishing touches on the presentation. Mind if I take a look? Fresh eyes might help. I hesitated. Sarah was smart, and her feedback could be valuable. But I also remembered her comment about the Morrison projections and how it had sent me down a rabbit hole of self-doubt. I'd appreciate that, I said finally, turning my monitor toward her. She studied the slides for several minutes, her expression neutral. These are good, Emma. Really good. The data visualization is particularly effective. Thank you. There's just one thing. She pointed to a slide showing projected cost savings. This number here, are you sure it's accurate? It seems almost too good to be true. I followed her finger to the figure. $200,000 annually. I ran the calculations multiple times. It's conservative, if anything. Conservative? Her eyebrows rose. Emma, I don't want to sound negative, but promising that kind of savings to the board. If you're wrong, it could be career ending. Career ending. The words echoed in my mind long after she'd left for the night, but as I sat there in the quiet office, reviewing my work for the 100th time, I realized something important. Sarah's concerns weren't about protecting me from failure. They were about protecting herself from my success. For the first time in our lives, I was stepping out of her shadow, and she was discovering that she didn't like sharing the spotlight. The question was, how far would she go to keep it? The thing about living with chronic pain is that you develop a strange relationship with discomfort. You learn to categorize it, to push through the manageable levels, and acknowledge when you need to stop. But there's another kind of pain that's harder to navigate, the kind that comes from people you love. I'd been ignoring the signs for months. The subtle put-downs disguised as concern. The way Sarah would redirect conversations when I mentioned work accomplishments. The careful way she'd phrase things to remind me of my limitations while maintaining plausible deniability. But Thursday morning, the pattern became impossible to ignore. I was in the break room again, that same coffee machine gurgling away when I heard her voice through the partition. This time, she was talking to Amanda from HR. I'm just worried about the pressure we're putting on her, Sarah was saying. Emma's been through so much, and now we're asking her to present to the board. What if she has an episode? An episode? Like I was some kind of unstable mental patient? Has she had problems before? Amanda asked, her voice professional but concerned. Not at work, but, well, you know about the accident. The depression afterward was pretty severe. Dad was really worried about her for a while. My coffee mug trembled in my hands. She was sharing details about my medical history, details I confided in her during my darkest moments with our HR representative. Should we be concerned about her presenting to the board? Amanda asked. Oh, I'm sure she'd be fine. She's been working so hard on this project, maybe too hard. I just think we should have a backup plan, in case she gets overwhelmed. I set my coffee down and walked out of the break room, but not before catching Amanda's expression through the glass. She looked troubled, like she was already mentally drafting a memo about my fitness for high-pressure situations. The next few hours were a blur of paranoid analysis. Every glance from colleagues felt loaded with meaning. When Mr. Chen walked past my cubicle without his usual greeting, I wondered if Amanda had already spoken to him. When my phone buzzed with a text from Dad asking how work was going, I wondered if Sarah had called him with concerns about my episode risked up by lunch. I was convinced that my presentation opportunity was about to disappear. You look stressed, Sarah observed when I returned from a walk around the building. Are you feeling okay? I'm fine, I said, probably too quickly. If you're having second thoughts about the board presentation, it's okay to say so. I could always step in and present your findings. I know the material pretty well from the committee work. There it was. The offer to rescue me from my own success. I'm not having second thoughts, I replied firmly. Of course not. I just want you to know that you have options. We're a team, Emma. We support each other. A team. But teams don't usually have one member sabotaging the other's reputation with HR. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going home after work, I walked to the Starbucks across the street from our office and called my therapist. Dr. Martinez had been helping me navigate the psychological aftermath of the accident for over a year. She was a small woman with kind eyes and an uncanny ability to cut through my tendency toward self-blame. Emma, I'm glad you called, she said when I explained the situation. What you're describing sounds like a pattern of behavior that goes beyond normal sibling rivalry. But she's not wrong about my history. I did struggle with depression. I have been through trauma. And you've also done the work to address those challenges. You've been stable for months, you're excelling at your job, and you've earned this. Opportunity on merit. The question is, why would your sister want to undermine that? I stared out the coffee shop window at the office building where Sarah was probably still working late, probably still being the perfect employee everyone expected her to be. I think she's scared, I said finally. This is the first time in our lives that I've succeeded at something she hasn't also succeeded at, maybe better than she has. And how does that make you feel? Guilty, like I'm betraying her. By being good at something. Emma, success isn't a zero-sum game. You achieving something doesn't diminish your sister's accomplishments, but her behavior suggests she might see it that way. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a new sense of clarity. I'd spent years accepting Sarah's version of her. Dynamic. She was the capable one. I was the one who needed help. But capability isn't fixed. People grow, change, develop new strengths. I was pulling together my final presentation materials when Amanda from HR approached my desk. Emma, do you have a few minutes to chat? My stomach dropped. Of course. We walked to her office and she closed the door behind us. I wanted to touch base about your upcoming board presentation. Are you feeling prepared? Very prepared, I said, trying to project confidence. Good. And you're comfortable with the pressure? No concerns about managing the stress? So Sarah's conversation had made an impact. Amanda, can I ask why you're asking about stress management specifically? She looked uncomfortable. I just want to make sure you have the support you need. I know you face some health challenges, and I want to be sure we're not putting you in a position that might be difficult. My health challenges don't affect my ability to do my job, I said carefully. I've been performing well for 6 months, and this presentation is based on work I've already completed successfully. Of course, I'm not questioning your capabilities. I'm just looking out for your well-being. I appreciate that, but I'm confident in my ability to handle this presentation. Is there a specific concern I should address? Amanda hesitated. Your sister mentioned that you've been under a lot of pressure lately. She's just looking out for you. There it was. Sarah's concern, filtered through HR, now part of my official record. Amanda, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has this conversation affected Mr. Chun's confidence in my ability to present to the board? Not at all, she said quickly. This is just a wellness check. But I could see the doubt in her eyes. Sarah had planted a seed, and it was already growing. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Sarah's desk. I waited until she left for her yoga class. Then used the facility's key I'd borrowed from Janet Morrison to get back into the building. I felt sick doing it, but I needed to understand what I was dealing with. Sarah's desk was meticulously organized, every paper in its place. But in her bottom drawer, I found a folder labeled Green Initiatives Committee that made my blood run. Cold dot inside were printouts of emails between Sarah and several board members dated over the past 3 months. The emails discussed sustainability initiatives, cost-saving measures, and implementation timelines. But they also contained ideas that sounded remarkably similar to the recommendations in my report. Similar, but not identical, and dated weeks. Before I'd submitted my final draft, I photographed the relevant pages with my phone, my hands shaking as I tried to process what I was seeing. Either Sarah had been developing parallel ideas to mine, or she'd somehow accessed my work and was preparing to claim credit for it. I was about to close the folder when I saw one more document. A draft email to Mr. Chun, dated 2 days ago. That had never been sent. Richard, I've been reviewing Emma's sustainability report, and while I'm impressed by her effort, I have some concerns about the technical accuracy of her projections. Several of the recommendations overlap with work my committee has been developing, and I worry that the board presentation might benefit from a more collaborative approach. Perhaps we could discuss having me co-present to ensure the technical details are properly addressed. Sarah, co-present. She was going to try to share credit for my work. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and left the building, my mind racing. For the first time in our lives, I was seeing Sarah clearly, not as the perfect big sister who'd always looked out for me, but as someone whose identity was so threatened by my success that she was willing to undermine me professionally. Question was, what was I going to do about it? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind cycling through possibilities like a broken record. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's unsent email, her careful words designed to position herself as the technical expert while casting doubt on my competence. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her directly. That would only put her on the defensive and give her time to cover her tracks. Instead, I was going to document everything and let the evidence speak for itself. I arrived at the office early, before Sarah's usual 8:30 arrival time. I had 20 minutes to prepare, and I used them to set up what I could only describe as a professional honey trap. Opened my presentation file and created a new slide, one that contained a deliberately obvious error. I made the mistake significant, enough that any business professional would catch it, but buried it deep. Enough in the technical details that you'd have to be really studying the presentation to find it. Then I sent Sarah an email. Hi, Sarah. I'm putting the finishing touches on my board presentation. Since you offered to take a look with fresh eyes, I'm attaching the latest version. I'd love your thoughts by this afternoon if you have time. Thanks for being so supportive. Emma. I watched her read the email 15 minutes later, saw the slight smile that crossed her face as she opened the attachment. She spent nearly an hour going through the slides, and I could tell from her body language that she'd found the error, but she didn't say anything. At lunch, I sat in the break room with a clear view of her desk. She was on the phone, her voice low and urgent. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see her consulting the printed version of my presentation as she spoke. 20 minutes later, Amanda from HR walked past my cubicle. She didn't make eye contact, but she looked troubled. Emma, Sarah said, when I returned from lunch, I had a chance to review your presentation. It's really impressive work. Thank you. Any suggestions for improvement? Just minor things. The data visualization is excellent, and your methodology is sound. She paused, and I could see her calculating. There might be one small issue with the projected savings calculation on slide 12, but I'm sure it's just a typo. A typo? She'd found the error I'd planted, but instead of telling me about it directly, she'd reported it to someone else first. What kind of issue? I asked innocently. Oh, it's probably nothing. Just a decimal point in the wrong place. I'm sure you'll catch it when you do your final review. She was giving me a chance to fix it, but only after she'd already reported it to HR. That way, she could claim she'd tried to help me while still ensuring that doubts about my competence were officially on record. I spent the rest of the afternoon waiting for the other shoe to drop. It came at 4:30 p.m. in the form of a meeting request from Mr. Chen. Emma, do you have a few minutes to discuss your presentation? His office was on the corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. I'd only been in there twice before, and both times had been for routine check-ins. This felt different. I've been looking forward to hearing your thoughts, I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. The work is excellent, he said, but his tone was measured. Thorough, innovative, practical. Exactly what we need. I sense a but coming. He smiled slightly. You're perceptive. Emma, I want to be transparent with you. I've received some feedback about the presentation that I need to address. My stomach tightened. What kind of feedback? Concerns about the technical accuracy of some of your calculations, specifically the projected cost savings figures. From who? He hesitated. It's not really relevant. What matters is that we need to be absolutely certain about the numbers before we present them to the board. Mr. Chen, I've triple-checked those calculations. They're conservative, if anything. I believe you. But I think it might be wise to have someone else review the technical details. Perhaps Sarah could co-present with you, given her experience with the Green Initiatives Committee. There it was, Sarah's plan, executed perfectly. I appreciate the suggestion, I said carefully, but I'm confident in my work. If there are specific concerns about the calculations, I'd be happy to walk through my methodology. That's not necessary. I just think a collaborative approach might be safer. The word hung in the air between us. Mr. Chun, can I ask you something? Are these concerns about my technical competence or about my ability to handle the pressure of presenting to the board? He looked uncomfortable. Emma, no one is questioning your competence. We're just trying to set you up for success. By having my sister present my work, by ensuring the presentation is as strong as possible, I took a deep breath. I understand your concerns, but I've spent 3 weeks perfecting this analysis, and I know it better than anyone. If you're worried about a specific calculation, let me show you my methodology right now. I pulled out my laptop and opened the presentation file, the real one, not the version with the planted error. This is the actual presentation I'll be giving to the board. The one I sent to Sarah had a test error that I included deliberately. His eyebrows rose. A test error? I wanted to see if the feedback I was getting was genuine or if someone was trying to undermine my credibility. I showed him the slide with the deliberately wrong calculation, then showed him the correct version. The error was obvious and significant. Anyone reviewing the presentation in good faith would have pointed it out immediately. Mr. Chen studied both versions carefully, and Sarah found this error. She mentioned it, but only after I'd already been contacted by HR about my fitness for the presentation. I see. He leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Emma, these are serious allegations. I'm not making allegations. I'm showing you evidence. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Mr. Chun opened his desk drawer and pulled out a printed email. I received this yesterday, he said, sliding it across the desk, from your sister. It was the email I'd found in Sarah's desk, the one about co-presenting. But this version had been sent. She's concerned about your technical accuracy, he continued. She's also concerned about the pressure you're under and whether you're ready for this level of responsibility. And what do you think? I think, he said slowly, that your methodology is sound, your analysis is brilliant, and your presentation should proceed as planned. Without co-presenters, relief flooded through me. Thank you. But Emma, I need you to understand something. Office politics are a reality in any workplace. What you've uncovered about your sister's behavior is concerning, but it's also delicate. How do you want to handle this? I thought about Sarah's unsent email, her conversations with HR, her careful campaign to undermine my confidence while maintaining her image as the supportive sister. I want to give the presentation as planned, I said, and I want to succeed on my own merit, but I also want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Fair enough. The presentation is yours, Emma. Make it count. As I walked back to my desk, I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. I'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Sarah was still sitting at her desk, still smiling her perfect smile, still believing she could control the narrative, but she'd made a critical mistake. She'd underestimated me, and I was about to show her just how costly that mistake could be. The morning of the board presentation, I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. The building was almost empty, just security guards and the cleaning crew finishing their overnight shift. I needed the quiet to center myself, to run through my presentation one final time without distractions. I'd barely slept the night before, but it wasn't nerves keeping me awake. It was anticipation. For the first time in months, I felt like I was operating from a position of strength rather than constantly defending against. Sarah's subtle attack stopped by 7:30. I was in the conference room, testing the projector and familiarizing myself with the setup. The presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m., but I wanted everything perfect. I'd learned from my physical therapy sessions that preparation was the antidote to anxiety. You're here early. Sarah's voice made me turn around. She stood in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in her hands. I brought you some caffeine. Thought you might need it. Thanks. I accepted the cup, noting how she'd remembered exactly how I liked it. 2 sugars, splash of cream. It was a small gesture, but it reminded me of the sister I'd grown up with, the one who'd brought me soup when I was sick and helped me practice for spelling bees. How are you feeling? She asked, settling into one of the chairs around the conference table. Ready? I'm sure you are. You've worked so hard on this. She paused, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. Emma, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Whatever happens today, you've already accomplished something remarkable. The words should have felt supportive, but I caught the qualifier, whatever happens today. Like she was already preparing me for failure. Thank you, I said simply. I know things have been complicated between us lately. Work dynamics can be tricky when you're family. She looked at me over her coffee cup. But I want you to know that I'm in your corner. Always, always. Except when she was questioning my competence to HR. I appreciate that, Sarah. Good, because I have something to tell you. She set down her cup and leaned forward. Mr. Chen asked me to attend the presentation today. Not to co-present, she added quickly, but to answer any technical questions about the committee's previous work. I hope that's okay. It wasn't okay. It was a carefully orchestrated move to insert herself into my moment, to ensure that even if I succeeded, she'd be part of the story. Of course, I said. The more expertise in the room, the better. She smiled, but I could see the calculation behind it. I'm glad you see it that way. Some people might feel threatened by having family involved in their big moment. Threatened. Another carefully chosen word, designed to make me seem insecure if I objected. I'm not threatened by expertise, I replied. I'm confident in my work. Of course you are, and you should be. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping our coffee like sisters who genuinely supported each other. But I could feel the tension underneath, the careful dance of words and implications that had become our normal mode of communication. At 1:45 p.m. I stood outside the boardroom door, presentation materials in hand. Through the glass, I could see the board members taking their seats, 7 senior partners, including Mr. Chen, plus Sarah sitting discreetly at the back of the room with her. Notebook and supportive smile. My left leg was aching from the stress. A dull throb that reminded me of everything I'd overcome to get to this moment. 80 months ago, I'd been convinced my career was over. Now I was about to present the most important work of my professional life. Ready? Mr. Chen appeared beside me, his expression warm but serious. Ready? We entered the room together, and I took my position at the front while Mr. Chen made introductions. The board members were a mix of ages and backgrounds, but they all had that sharp-eyed look of people who'd built their careers on identifying opportunities and risks. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chen began, as you know, we've been discussing sustainability initiatives for several months. Today, Emma Rodriguez will present an analysis that I believe represents a significant breakthrough in our approach to environmental responsibility and cost management. I clicked to my first slide, a simple title page with my name prominently displayed. In my peripheral vision, I saw Sarah lean forward slightly. Thank you, Mr. Chen, board members. What I'm about to show you represents 3 weeks of intensive analysis, but more importantly, it represents a roadmap to $200,000 in annual savings while reducing our environmental impact by 30%. Murmur rippled through the room. I'd led with the bottom line, just as Mr. Chen had taught me in our practice sessions. The analysis is based on cross-departmental resource mapping, predictive modeling for waste reduction, and a comprehensive review of our current practices against industry best practices. I moved through the slides methodically, explaining my methodology, presenting the data, and building toward the recommendations. The board members were engaged, asking pointed questions about implementation timelines and measurement benchmarks. Ms. Rodriguez interrupted Margaret Walsh, the most senior partner. These savings projections seem quite aggressive. What gives you confidence in these numbers? Excellent question, Ms. Walsh. I have actually been conservative in my calculations. I clicked to a detailed breakdown. For example, the EVIC optimization alone will save us $75,000 annually, but that's based on a 15% efficiency improvement. Industry standards suggest we could achieve 20 to 25% with the same investment. And you've vetted these projections with our facilities management team? Extensively. Mrs. Morrison and I spent 2 full days reviewing the implementation logistics and cost structures. Margaret nodded approvingly. Impressive thoroughness. I was halfway through the presentation when David Park, another senior partner, raised his hand. Ms. Rodriguez, I have to ask, some of these recommendations sound familiar. Haven't we been discussing similar initiatives through our Green Committee? This was it. The moment Sarah had been waiting for. That's an excellent point, Mr. Park. I said, my voice steady. The Green Initiatives Committee has been doing valuable work to raise awareness and identify potential areas for improvement. However, what I'm presenting today represents a quantitative analysis with specific implementation frameworks and measurable outcomes. I clicked to my next slide, which showed a comparison chart. As you can see, while the committee has identified several areas of concern, there hasn't been a systematic approach to prioritizing initiatives based on cost-benefit analysis or implementation visibility. Sarah shifted in her seat. I could see her wanting to interject, but she wasn't technically part of the presentation. The committee's work has been foundational, I continued, but what we needed was a data-driven approach to turn good intentions into actionable results. Ms. Rodriguez, Margaret Walsh, spoke up again. This level of analysis is quite sophisticated. Have you had assistance from other departments in developing these recommendations? I worked closely with facilities management for the operational data, and I consulted with our IT department on the energy consumption metrics. But the analysis and recommendations are based on my own research and modeling. Impressive, she said, making a note. Please continue. I moved through the rest of the presentation, feeling the room's energy shift from polite attention to genuine excitement. When I reached the implementation timeline, several board members were taking detailed notes. In conclusion, I said, clicking to my final slide, this isn't just about doing the right thing environmentally. It's about demonstrating that responsible business practices and financial performance aren't mutually exclusive. We can reduce our environmental impact while improving our bottom line. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Margaret Walsh started clapping, and the rest of the board joined in. Excellent work, Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Chun said. Questions for Emma? David Park raised his hand. When can we start implementation? The pilot program could begin next month, I replied. Full implementation would take 6 months, with measurable results within the first quarter. And you're confident in your ability to oversee this implementation? Absolutely. I've developed detailed project management timelines and identified key stakeholders for each phase. Margaret Walsh leaned forward. Ms. Rodriguez, I have to say, this is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need more of. Have you considered a role in strategic planning? Before I could answer, Sarah cleared her throat. If I may, she said, her voice carrying across the room. I think it's important to note that some of these recommendations have been under consideration by the Green Initiatives Committee for several months. Emma's done excellent work quantifying the potential benefits, but the foundational research was collaborative. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Sarah, then back to me. I appreciate my sister's perspective, I said carefully, but I believe the documentation speaks for itself. The analysis presented today is based on original research and modeling that I conducted independently. Of course, Sarah said quickly. I'm not suggesting otherwise. I'm just providing context about the committee's ongoing work. Margaret Walsh looked between us, her expression thoughtful. Ms. Rodriguez, are you saying that this analysis is entirely your own work? Yes, ma'am. I consulted with various departments for data collection, but the methodology, analysis, and recommendations are my own. I see. She turned to Sarah. And you're saying that some of these ideas were already being considered by your committee? Some of the general concepts, yes. But Emma's quantitative approach is certainly more comprehensive than what we've been able to accomplish. It was masterfully done. Sarah had managed to claim partial credit while appearing to compliment my work, but I was ready for this moment. If I may, I said, I'd like to address this directly. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I'd taken of Sarah's desk drawer. I have documentation showing the timeline of my work on this project, including preliminary drafts and research. Notes dating back 6 weeks. I walked to the projector and connected my phone. The image filled the screen, Sarah's folder labeled Green Initiatives Committee with her emails visible. As you can see, these emails between my sister and board, numbers about sustainability initiatives are dated 3 weeks ago, well after my initial research was complete. The room was dead silent. Sarah's face had gone pale. I'm not suggesting any impropriety, I continued, but I think it's important to establish the timeline of this work clearly. The analysis I've presented today represents months of independent research and development. Margaret Walsh studied the projected emails carefully. These certainly appear to be dated after Ms. Rodriguez's initial work, she said finally. Emma, Mr. Chun's voice was measured. How did you come by these documents? I found them in my sister's desk drawer when I was looking for a stapler. I lied smoothly. I was concerned about the timeline discrepancy, so I documented it. It wasn't the truth, but it was a truth that protected me from accusations of snooping, while exposing Sarah's attempt to claim credit. I see, Margaret Walsh said. Well, this is certainly illuminating. Sarah was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of shock, betrayal, and something that might have been respect. In any case, Margaret continued, the work speaks for itself. Ms. Rodriguez, this is exceptional analysis. And I move that we approve the implementation plan immediately. Seconded, said David Park. The vote was unanimous. As the board members filed out, congratulating me and discussing implementation details, Sarah remained seated. When we were finally alone, she looked at me with something approaching awe. That was quite a performance, she said quietly. It wasn't a performance, it was the truth. You played me perfectly. The test error, the documentation, the presentation timing, you orchestrated all of it. I defended my work. That's what professionals do. She stood up slowly, gathering her things. You know, Emma, I never thought you had it in you. The ruthlessness, I'm not ruthless. I'm just tired of being underestimated. By me, by everyone, including myself. She walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you were brilliant in there. Dad would be proud. Thanks. But this changes things between us. You know that, right? I looked at her, this woman who'd shaped so much of my identity, who'd been both my biggest supporter and my most subtle underminer. I know. After she left, I sat alone in the conference room, staring at the presentation slides still glowing on. The screen, I'd won, but it felt different than I'd expected. There was satisfaction, certainly, and relief. But there was also sadness. I'd proven that I didn't need pity to succeed. But in the process, I'd also proven that the sister I'd looked up to my entire life was more fragile than I'd ever imagined. The question was, what would she do next? The Friday after my presentation, I arrived at the office to find a gift bag on my desk. Inside was a bottle of champagne and a note written in Sarah's careful handwriting. Congratulations on your success. You've earned it. It was a gracious gesture, the kind of thing the old Sarah would have done. But I'd learned to look for the layers beneath her actions, and this felt like something else entirely. A strategic withdrawal, perhaps, or the opening move in a new game. Morning, superstar, called Janet Morrison as she passed my cubicle. How does it feel to be the woman of the hour? Pretty good, I admitted. The praise had been consistent since Thursday's presentation. People who'd barely acknowledged me before were stopping by to congratulate me, asking about my methodology, treating me like someone whose opinion mattered. You've earned it, Janet said. That presentation was something else. I've been here 15 years and I've never seen the board that excited about anything. Sarah's desk was empty when I arrived, though her computer was on and her coffee cup was still warm. I found her in the break room, staring out the window at the city skyline. The champagne was thoughtful, I said, joining her at the window. Thank you. You're welcome. She didn't turn around. I wanted to apologize for yesterday, for trying to insert myself into your moment. You don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. She finally looked at me, and I was surprised to see genuine emotion in her eyes. I've been thinking about what you said about being underestimated. I think I've been part of that problem. Sarah, let me finish. I've spent so long thinking of myself as the responsible one, the one who looks out for you, that I never notice when you stop needing that protection. Maybe I didn't want to notice. It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in months. I never wanted to compete with you, I said. I just wanted to be good at something. And you are. You're brilliant, Emma. What you did yesterday, not just the presentation, but the way you handled everything. I couldn't have done it better myself. Coming from Sarah, that was the highest compliment imaginable. So what happens now? I asked. Now we figure out how to be sisters again, instead of whatever we've been lately. I wanted to believe her. The champagne, the apology, the admission of fault, it all felt genuine. but I'd learned to be cautious around Sarah's sincerity. "I'd like that," I said. We walked back to our desks together, and for the first time in months, the silence between us felt comfortable instead of charged with unspoken tension. The morning passed quietly. I worked on developing the implementation timeline for my sustainability project, fielding congratulatory emails, and starting to think about the logistics of actually executing the plan I presented. Around 11, Mr. Chun stopped by my desk. "Emma, do you have a moment?" We walked to his office, and he closed the door behind us. "I wanted to follow up on yesterday's presentation," he said, settling behind his desk. The board was extremely impressed. "I've been authorized to offer you a promotion to senior strategic analyst, effective immediately." "That's wonderful. Thank you. There's more. We're also creating a new position, Director of Sustainability Initiatives. The board would like you to consider taking it on." Director? The title felt surreal. 6 months ago, I'd been grateful for an entry-level position. Now I was being offered a director-level role. "I'm honored by the offer," I said carefully. "Can I ask about the timeline?" "We'd like to move quickly. The sustainability project has generated significant interest from our clients, and we want to position ourselves as leaders in this space." "What would this mean for Sarah's committee?" Mr. Chun's expression grew thoughtful. "That's actually something we need to discuss. The Green Initiatives Committee has been valuable for raising awareness, but we need someone with your analytical skills to drive actual implementation. The committee would likely be restructured under your oversight, Sarah's committee, under my oversight." The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'd want to make sure we honor the work that's already been done," I said diplomatically. "Of course. Sarah's contributions have been noted. But Emma, I need to be direct with you. What happened yesterday in the boardroom was concerning. The attempt to claim credit for your work, the questions about your competence that were raised with HR, these things have consequences. I understand. Not saying Sarah's position is in jeopardy, but her credibility with the board has been impacted. Your success highlights the gap between talking about initiatives and actually implementing them." I felt a flutter of anxiety. "Mr. Chen, I hope my presentation didn't create problems for Sarah. That wasn't my intention." "Your intention was to do excellent work, and you succeeded. Any problems that arose from that are not your responsibility." "But they felt like my responsibility. Sarah might have tried to undermine me, but she was still my sister." The idea that my success might damage her career left me feeling conflicted. "I appreciate the promotion and the opportunity," I said. "Can I have some time to think about the director position?" "Of course, but don't take too long. This kind of opportunity doesn't come around often." I walked back to my desk with my mind spinning. Director of Sustainability Initiatives. It was everything I'd never dared to dream of, handed to me on a silver platter. But it also meant taking over Sarah's domain, becoming her superior in the organizational hierarchy. Sarah wasn't at her desk when I returned. According to her calendar, she was in a meeting with Amanda from HR, but couldn't be good. I tried to focus on my work, but I kept glancing at the conference room where Sarah was meeting with Amanda. Through the glass, I could see animated conversation. Gestures, what looked like a heated discussion. After an hour, Sarah emerged looking pale and shaken. She walked straight to my desk. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Not here." "Can you meet me for coffee after work?" "Of course. Is everything okay? I'll tell you later." The rest of the day passed in a haze of anxiety. I couldn't concentrate on anything, couldn't stop wondering what Amanda had said to Sarah, what consequences my presentation might have triggered. At 5:30, I met Sarah at the coffee shop across from her office. She'd already claimed a corner table, away from the other customers. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee cup, and she looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. "They're restructuring the Green Initiatives Committee," she said without preamble. "Effective Monday. Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't know. It's not your fault. Well, not entirely." She managed a weak smile. Amanda was very diplomatic about it. Budget constraints, organizational efficiency, the need to consolidate sustainability efforts under more experienced leadership. "What does that mean for you?" "It means I'm being moved to a different department, client relations." "A lateral move." "Technically, but we both know what it really is." a demotion. Not in title or salary, but in prestige and influence. I'm so sorry, I said, and I meant it. Don't be. I brought this on myself. She looked at me directly. Emma, I need to tell you something about yesterday, about the emails you found, about all of it. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because if I don't say this now, I'll never have the courage to say it at all. She took a deep breath. I was jealous. Not just of your success, but of your resilience. After the accident, watching you fight back from something that would have destroyed me, seeing you find strength I didn't know you had, it made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. Sarah, I'm not finished. I've spent my whole life being the capable one, the one who had it all figured out. My identity was built on being better than everyone else, including you. And when you started excelling at work, when you showed that you could be brilliant and innovative and strong, it threatened the story I'd been telling myself about who I was. But you're brilliant and innovative, am I? Or am I just good at playing the game? Your presentation yesterday, the way you handled the board, the strategic thinking behind everything you did, that's real capability. What I do is performance. Sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. I'm proud of you, she said. I'm also terrified of you, but mostly I'm proud. I never wanted to compete with you, I said. I just wanted to be good at something. And you are. You're better than good. You're exceptional. So are you. She squeezed my hand. We'll see. I'm going to have to figure out who I am when I'm not the star of the show. You're my sister. That's enough. Is it? After everything I've done, I thought about the past few months, the subtle undermining, the attempts to claim credit for my work, the conversations with HR designed to make me look unstable. But I also thought about the champagne on my desk, the genuine apology, the honesty in her eyes right now. Yes, I said, it's enough. She started crying then, quietly, tears sliding down her cheeks as she gripped my hand. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. How to be the sister who isn't always ahead. You learn, I said. Like I learned how to be the sister who isn't always behind. We sat there for a long time, holding hands across the coffee shop table, two sisters trying to figure out how to love each other without the familiar dynamics that had defined our relationship for 25 years. It was the beginning of something new between us. But I had no idea how much that new beginning would be tested in the weeks to come. Monday morning brought a strange sense of displacement. Sarah's desk had been cleared out over the weekend, her personal items moved to the client relations department. On the third floor, the space felt empty, like a missing tooth that you can't stop probing with your tongue. I'd accepted the director of sustainability initiatives position, along with a corner office and a 30% salary increase. The office still smelled like fresh paint and new carpet, and I spent my first hour just sitting behind the desk, trying to process the surreal reality of my new life. Knock, knock. Janet Morrison stood in my doorway, grinning. Look at you. All fancy with your own office. It doesn't feel real yet, I admitted. It will. And Emma, you deserve this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. By noon, I was deep in meetings about budget allocations and implementation timelines. The sustainability project had generated so much interest that we'd already received inquiries from 3 major clients about similar analysis for their organizations. Mr. Chun was talking about expanding the program into a full service offering. We could be looking at an entirely new revenue stream, he explained during our strategy meeting. Environmental consulting, efficiency audits, sustainability planning. There's a huge market for this kind of expertise. I'd love to explore that, I said, making notes. We'd need to hire additional staff, probably someone with environmental engineering background. Agreed. I want you to start putting together a hiring proposal. Think big, Emma. This could be transformative for the company. Transformative. 6 months ago, I'd been grateful for a chance to prove I wasn't useless. Now I was being asked to transform an entire division of the company. I was working late Tuesday evening when my phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. Hey, I answered. How's the new department? Humbling, she said, and I could hear the weariness in her voice. I spent the day learning about client retention strategies and service delivery protocols. Turns. Out, I don't know as much about the business side as I thought I did. Learning curve, more like learning cliff. But my supervisor seems nice, and the work is different. More collaborative, less about being the smartest person in the room. That could be good for you. Yeah, maybe. Listen, I called because I wanted to ask you something. Are you free for dinner Thursday? I know it's weird, having dinner with your former rival, but I thought, Sarah, you were never my rival. You were my sister who happened to work at the same company. Right. Well, your sister, who happens to work at the same company, would like to buy you dinner to celebrate your promotion. If you're interested, I smiled. I'd love that. Good. And Emma, I'm proud of you. I know. I said that before, but I wanted to say it again. What you've accomplished in the past few months, it's remarkable. Wednesday brought a new challenge. I was reviewing resumes for the environmental engineer position when Amanda from HR knocked on my door. Emma, do you have a minute? I need to discuss something with you. Of course, come in. She closed the door behind her and took a seat across from my desk. I wanted to follow up on some concerns that have been raised about your work relationship with Sarah. My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? Nothing serious, but there have been questions about potential conflicts of interest. Having family members in the same department, especially now that you're in a supervisory role, can create complications. Sarah's not in my department anymore. She's in client relations. True, but there's still the perception issue. Some people might question whether your promotion was influenced by family connections rather than merit. I felt my temper rising. Amanda, my promotion was based on a presentation to the board that resulted in unanimous approval for a project that will save the company. $200,000 annually? I'm not sure how family connections factor into that. Of course not. I'm not questioning your qualifications. But appearances matter in a corporate environment. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of the potential for gossip. What are you suggesting? Nothing specific. Just that you might want to maintain clear professional boundaries. Avoid the appearance of favoritism or family influence. After she left, I sat in my office feeling frustrated and confused. I'd proven my competence, earned my promotion, and was already generating new revenue for the company. But apparently, I still had to worry about people questioning whether I deserved my success. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months ago, Sarah had been concerned about me getting a job due to pity. Now I was being warned about people thinking I got promoted due to family connections. I was still mulling over Amanda's visit when my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Dinner tomorrow still on? I found a great place downtown. I typed back, yes, looking forward to it, but I didn't mention Amanda's visit. Some conversations were better had in person. Thursday evening, I met Sarah at an upscale bistro in the financial district. She'd chosen a table by the window where we could watch the city lights reflect off the river. She looked different, less polished than usual, her hair in a simple ponytail instead of her usual elaborate style. You look tired, I said as we settled into our seats. I am tired. Learning a new job is exhausting. But good exhausting, if that makes sense. It does. How's the client relations work? Harder than I expected. I've been so focused on internal politics for so long that I forgot how to actually serve clients. It's humbling. We ordered wine and appetizers, falling into an easy conversation about work, family, life. It felt like the first normal interaction we'd had in months. Can I ask you something? Sarah said as we waited for our entrees. Are you happy with how things turned out? You mean with the promotion? I mean with all of it. The job, the success. The way our relationship has changed. Are you happy? I considered the question. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. But I'm also sad about what we lost along the way. What did we lose? The simplicity, I guess. When you were the successful one and I was the one who needed help, things were clearer. Now we're both trying to figure out how to be sisters when we're also colleagues. Is that why you looked so troubled when you walked in tonight? I hesitated, then decided to be direct. Amanda from HR talked to me today about potential conflicts of interest, about people questioning whether my promotion was legitimate. Sarah's expression darkened. Because we're family. Because we're family, and because of the history with the Green Initiatives Committee, people might think there's some kind of arrangement. Fuck that, Sarah said, loud enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. Sorry, but seriously? Fuck that. You earned your promotion through brilliant work. Anyone who questions that is an idiot. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Emma, you need to understand something. What happened between us, the way I tried to undermine you, that was about my insecurity. It had nothing to do with your competence. You're the most capable person I know, and anyone who can't see that is willfully blind. Thank you for saying that. I'm not saying it to be nice. I'm saying it because it's true, and because I'm worried that you're going to let other people's doubts creep into your head the way you let mine creep in. She was right. I was already second-guessing myself, wondering if Amanda's warning was the first sign of a campaign to undermine my authority. How do I handle it? I asked, the same way you handled me, with documentation, preparation, and absolute confidence in your abilities. It's different when it's not family. No, it's not. Office politics are office politics. The only difference is that strangers might be less subtle about it than I was. We talked until the restaurant closed, working through strategies for managing workplace relationships, dealing with skeptics, and maintaining professional boundaries without sacrificing authentic connections. I have one more question, I said as we waited for the check. Are we going to be okay as sisters? I think so. We're different people than we were 6 months ago. The question is whether we can love the people we're becoming. And I'm working on it. But Emma, I need you to know, I'm not going to be the same sister I was before. I can't go back to being the one who always has the answers, who always knows what's best. I'm figuring out who I am when I'm not the star of the show. I never needed you to be the star. I just needed you to be my sister. I know that now. The question is whether I can be the sister you need without being the sister I used to be. We'll figure it out, I said, together. As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Optimism about my relationship with Sarah. We were different people now, shaped by success and failure, by competition and forgiveness. But we were still sisters. I had no idea that our new dynamic was about to face its biggest test yet. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, jolting me from sleep. I fumbled for my phone, expecting to see Sarah's name on the screen. Instead, it was Mr. Chun. Emma, I'm sorry to call so early, but we have a situation. Can you come in immediately? Of course. What's wrong? I'll explain when you get here. Just be prepared. This is going to be a difficult conversation. I dressed quickly and drove to the office, my mind racing through possibilities. A client emergency? A problem with the sustainability project? An issue with the new hire suite? Then planning? The office was eerily quiet when I arrived. Mr. Chun was waiting in the lobby, his expression grim. Let's go to my office, he said without preamble. We walked in silence through the empty corridors. Once we were behind closed doors, he turned to face me. Emma, I need to ask you about your relationship with Harrison Environmental Solutions. Harrison Environmental Solutions. I'd never heard of them. I don't have a relationship with them, I said. Should I? According to this, he said, sliding a document across his desk, you've been in contact with them about our sustainability methodologies. I picked up the document. It was a printout of an email thread, dated 3 days ago. The sender's name made my blood run cold. Emma Rodriguez. But I hadn't written these emails. Mr. Chun, I've never communicated with this company. I don't even know who they are. The emails came from your company account. I read through the thread, my hands shaking. Someone using my email address had been sharing detailed information about our sustainability analysis methodology, including proprietary calculations and client-specific data. The tone was professional, businesslike, as if I was negotiating some kind of consulting arrangement. This isn't me, I said firmly. Someone is using my email account without authorization. Emma, I want to believe you, but this is serious. If you've been sharing proprietary information with competitors, I haven't. Mr. Chun, I would never jeopardize the company like this. You know that. Do I? Emma, this company has been trying to poach our sustainability clients for months. These emails contain information that could help them replicate our analysis methods. Then we need to figure out who actually sent them, because it wasn't me. Mr. Chun studied my face for a long moment. I've suspended your system access pending an investigation. You'll need to work with IT to determine how your account was compromised. Compromised? You think someone hacked my email? I think someone with access to your account sent these emails. Whether that was you or someone else, we need to find out. I felt sick. 24 hours ago, I'd been planning the expansion of our sustainability program. Now I was under investigation for corporate espionage. Who reported this? I asked. Harrison Environmental contacted us directly. They said they'd been approached by someone claiming to represent Henderson and Associates, offering to share methodology in exchange for a consulting arrangement, and they just turned us in. Apparently, they have a strict policy against industrial espionage. They forwarded the entire email thread to our legal department. I spent the next 3 hours with Marcus Webb, our IT director, going through my email account line by line. The suspicious emails were definitely sent from my account, but there were no signs of external intrusion. Either someone guessed your password, Marcus explained, or someone had physical access to your computer while you were logged in. That's impossible. I always lock my screen when I leave my desk. Always. I thought about it. Well, maybe not always. Sometimes I just run to the bathroom or grab coffee. How long would someone need to send these emails? 5 minutes, maybe less if they knew what they were doing. 5 minutes. I thought about everyone who had access to my office who might have had opportunity to use my computer. The cleaning crew, facilities maintenance, other employees working late. Is there any way to trace when these emails were sent? Sure. Marcus pulled up the timestamp data. Monday evening, 7:23 p.m. Does that ring a bell? Monday evening. I'd been working late on the hiring proposal, but I'd left around 7:15 to meet my physical therapist. My office door had been unlocked, my computer logged in. I left the office at 7:15 that night, I said. I was running late for an appointment, so your computer was accessible to anyone who entered your office after you left. Yes, but who would do this? Who would want to sabotage me? Marcus shrugged. That's above my pay grade. But Emma, I have to ask, are you sure you didn't send these emails? Maybe you were exploring options and forgot about it? Unsure. Marcus, I would never do anything to hurt this company. I believe you, but the evidence is what it is. By noon, word had spread through the office. I could feel people staring as I walked through the halls, whispers following in my wake. Some looked sympathetic, others suspicious. A few seemed almost satisfied, as if they'd been waiting for me to fail. I was in my office, trying to focus, unworked despite my suspended system access, when Sarah appeared in my doorway. I heard, she said quietly. This is insane. Tell me about it. Sarah stepped fully into my office, closing the door softly behind her. I heard, she said. This is insane. I know, I said. But it's real. Someone sent those emails from my account. And right now, everyone's looking at me like I'm guilty. I don't believe it for a second, she said. Emma, if someone's targeting you like this, you need to fight back. I stared at her. Her concern looked real, but I couldn't help wondering if she was acting again, playing the role of the supportive sister now that the tables had turned. I'm working with Marcus from IT, I said. He's going through the logs and timestamp data. If someone used my computer, there should be some trace. Sarah's expression shifted barely, but enough. A flicker of something panic? Realization? What? I asked as she blinked. Nothing. Just be careful. This could get ugly. She turned and left before I could say anything else. Back with Marcus, we combed through the security footage. Finally, at 7:23 p.m., just minutes after I'd left my office that Monday evening, we saw a figure slip inside Dot. It wasn't Sarah Dot, it was Amanda. I stared at the grainy footage as Amanda sat at my desk, typed something quickly, and then left. Less than 5 minutes total. She had your computer, Marcus said. Logged in, no password needed. The email was sent right after. Can we prove it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. Absolutely. The next morning, I was back in Mr. Chun's office. The evidence laid out in front of him. Dot when he finished reviewing the footage and logs. He looked at me with something between apology and admiration. This changes everything, he said. Emma, you've been cleared. Relief washed over. ME, but it was short-lived. What happens now? We suspend Amanda immediately and launch a formal investigation. Legal will be involved. And Emma, this makes your position even more critical? I nodded. I understand. As I walked out of his office, I caught Sarah watching from the hallway. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. She just stared. For the first time, I couldn't read her. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't dared to admit before. Real test hadn't been the boardroom presentation, Dot. It was this. And it wasn't over. I stared at Sarah, searching her face for any hint, any flicker that she might know more than she was letting on. This is insane, she repeated, stepping further into my office and closing the door behind her. Emma, you have to fight this. I intend to, I said, my voice tight. She crossed her arms. Do you have any idea who might have done it? You mean besides someone with access to my computer? Someone who knows my schedule well enough to time it when I'd be gone? Sarah blinked, the insinuation hanging thick between us. You can't possibly think I don't know what to think, Sarah. I snapped. I want to believe you, but this was calculated. She didn't flinch. You're right. It was calculated. Which is why we need to find out. Who did it before this ruins your career? The shift in her tone surprised me. Not defensive, not indignant, resolute. We'll start with the security footage, she continued. There are cameras in the hallway outside your office. If someone went in after hours, it should be on record. I nodded. I'll talk to Marcus. She hesitated at the door. Emma, for what it's worth, I know how hard you've worked. And I swear to you, I didn't do this. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But trust, once cracked, doesn't fit back together without leaving seams. By mid-afternoon, Marcus had reviewed the security tapes. We've got footage, he said, pulling up the playback. The timestamp read 7:18 p.m. The figure entering my office wasn't Sarah. It was Amanda from HR. I stared at the screen, stunned. She moved with confidence, no hesitation, no fumbling, straight to my desk, logged in, and began typing. Marcus whistled softly. Well, that changes things. Yes, it does, I said, my pulse pounding. But why would Amanda do this? I confronted Mr. Chun immediately. He watched the footage in silence, his face a mask of controlled fury. I don't understand, he said finally. Why would Amanda frame you? I remembered her warnings about perception, about appearance, about family. She must have had a motive, I said. Maybe she thought I didn't belong here. Maybe she wanted someone else in this role. Or maybe, came Sarah's voice from the doorway, she was working with someone else. I turned to her. What do you mean? Sarah stepped inside. Holding a folder, I did some digging. Found out Amanda has ties to Harrison Environmental. Her sister works in their strategy department. Mr. Chun's eyes narrowed. And you're just now telling us this? I wasn't sure what it meant until now, Sarah said. But it looks like Amanda wanted to discredit Emma, feed the data to Harrison, and then paint the whole thing as a rogue employee gone off script. It made horrible, perfect sense. We'll handle this internally, Mr. Chun said. Emma, you're cleared effective immediately. I want you to prepare a statement. We'll be notifying the board. And Amanda? I asked. She's on administrative leave, pending investigation. I felt both weightless and exhausted. Later that night, I found myself back at the bistro with Sarah, where this strange new chapter of our lives had unofficially begun. She lifted her wine glass to being underestimated, she said with a smirk, and then proving them wrong. I added. We clinked glasses. I'd survived sabotage. I'd rebuilt trust. And I'd emerged not just whole, but stronger, not because of pity. Not in spite of the past, but because I finally claimed my voice.